back here in the UK, so I'm joined by friend of the show and also foreign affairs expert, James Marlow. So, James, let's start by talking about the fish. What's going on in the fish in France?
You must be referring to the French fish.
Yes, Jean Castaldo.
OK, so let me just... I can't update you too much, but basically the crew of the British fishing boat, which was detained, of course, by the French police last week, they are said to be in good spirits. They are remaining on the vessel itself until it's going to be released. We don't know what has happened behind the scenes, although Boris has come out quite strong against the French, and quite rightly so. Let me quote Ian Duncan Smith, who of course was the leader of the Conservative Party at one time, a Brexiteer. He says, and I'm quoting, President Macron is behaving as if the French are an independent country. And he added, they are not. The EU agreed on his behalf and France's behalf, and if he doesn't like the agreement, then he should take it up with the EU and not Britain. Now, of course, as we know, the French have threatened, as from Tuesday, to detain other French, or rather British vessels coming into French waters. It's quite confusing. And of course, they're going to make very stringent checks on British lorries coming into France, and they've also threatened to cut off the electricity to the island of Jersey. If that happens, I think the majority of the British people would get behind any proportional response that the British government may do. But we'll have to see what takes place on Tuesday, and the ball is in the French court.
It seems a little bit over the top, though, doesn't it, all these measures that they're threatening to do, simply for some licensing that weren't issued because some of those boats couldn't prove that they'd already been fishing previously in British waters. That's the reasoning, isn't it? The
reason why the French have detained this boat is because the French say that it did not have a licence. The British owner says it does have a licence. The EU is somewhere in between because it says it did have a licence, but the British perhaps took it away from them. It's very confusing.
There's a technicality in there somewhere that suggests that...
The fact is that this has to take place behind the scenes.
Right. So, can you give us a quick summary of COP, and then we'll go on to America?
OK, COP. Let me go back to basics. I think John Major once said that. Do people know what COP means?
Well, go on.
Conference of the Parties. Conference because it takes place as a meeting once a year, every single year. Since 1994, that's when a treaty was signed. If anyone wishes to know, it's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, signed in 1994. There was no meeting last year because, of course, COVID. And this is when the parties, being the nations of the world, all get together and talk about how they can change climate change for the better. The problem is, very briefly, China, Russia, the US, India, Pakistan, Brazil, Mexico, Saudi, the list goes on and on and on. They've got to decide whether they're going to make decisions based on the demonstrators or whether they're going to make decisions based on their own economies, on their own jobs, and on their own independence.
Well, you know, it'll all be based on money. Now let's have a wrap and tell me a little bit about America. Got about a minute and a half to tell me.
2 days to go before a very, very important election for governor of the state of Virginia. In times gone by, Virginia was always a Republican state. For the last 12 years, it has turned Democrat simply because there are more Democrat voters inside the state than there are Republicans. Hillary won it in 2016. Joe won it in 2020. However, there's a bit of a problem in bringing out the Democrat votes for Tuesday. The two candidates, or the two main candidates, the Democrat, very, very famous across America. Every newscast in America is following this story. Terry McAuliffe, he's got 47% according to one poll.
Yes.
His Republican challenger on 46% is Glenn Youngkin. The reason why this is such big news is because that the Democrats, and by the way, Joe Biden came out for a second time last week in the state to campaign, and guess how many times he mentioned Donald Trump's name in it?
Go on, I'll guess 30.
24, not a bad guess, 24
bad.
times.
Oh,
why?
gosh.
Because it appears that the Democrats don't actually have any policies for the governor of the state of Virginia. So what they're using is a policy of fear. In other words, if you vote for him, you're going to get Donald Trump back.
Wow.
And that can't be a good way to go ahead and run a campaign.
Right. Well, so when are we going to find out about this? Just give us a
Wednesday evening, we should know what the result is. And I can tell you that if the Republicans win, it's going to change a lot of things, because this time next year is the Congress elections.
Well, James Marlow, thank you so much for joining me. It's good stuff, isn't it? We'll find out more. He'll be back next week to give us another